the Rebbe's Torah on his big day. Okay, we're live. We are beginning. We're going to begin first with a little introduction about Chayel, and then we're going to go straight into the memoir. Let's first review some history about Chayel. The first event that's relevant to us, Chassidim on Chayel, was the passing, the yahrzeit of the Maharal of Prague, which occurred in the year, I believe, 1596. Anyone know the year? Hey, it was 1609. Yeah, 1609. The Maharal of Prague passes away. He was very old. He was almost 100 years old. Maybe he was 96 years old. Maybe that's what it was. The Maharal of Prague passed away. What is his connection? Well, first off, the Maharal of Prague was one of the first ones who collaborated together, Nigla, Chassidus, Nigla, and Nister. Not Chassidus yet, but Nister. Esoteric teachings of Torah, as well as he is, of course, the paternal great-grandfather of the Alter Rebbe. Skip about 95 years later, and the Baal Shem Tov is born in the year 1698, Shnas Nachas. Then, at the age of 16 on Chai Elul, the Baal Shem Tov reached his 16th birthday. The Baal Shem Tov was doing his Baidadus outside of a hotel, of an inn that he stayed in. He went into the forest, which he would usually do, and he began doing his Baidadus, Meyachid Yechudim, to make divine unifications. And lo and behold, he sees a man with a long white beard who introduces himself as Eliyahu Hanavi. That was the Baal Shem Tov's first meeting with Eliyahu Hanavi on his 16th birthday. And Eliyahu Hanavi begins laughing at the Baal Shem Tov. Not with him, but at him. And the Baal Shem Tov asks, Rabbi Eliyahu, it's the first time we've met. What's so funny? So he says, what's so funny is that you're out here trying for hours so hard to make the divine unifications in the spheres with all of the names of God that you were taught. As is known, the Baal Shem Tov at a very young age, I believe either 6 or 9, he ran away with a tzaddik nister and lived with him for 10 years. I believe, yeah, it was age 6, yes. From 6 to 16, that was the 10 years, and then 16 to the Eliyahu Hanavi. So you're here busy doing all these yichudim, while your innkeeper, who's a simple Jew, when he says Baruch Hashem, when he's asked about his parnasa, he says Baruch Hashem, thank the one above, thank the Lord, thank the Almighty. He accomplishes those same yichudim in a matter of moments when it takes you hours to try to do and you're still working. So I was laughing, it's funny. So that, the Rebbe Rayatz tells over the story, and he says that event changed the Baal Shem Tov's life. First of all, that was when the Baal Shem Tov began learning from Eliyahu Hanavi. He learned with him for 10 years until Chai Elul 1724. So this happened 1714, this episode. And what had changed about him was that, number one, he learned to appreciate Pasha Yidden. He learned to enter into a recognition that of the greatness and effect of simple Jews. And number two, of the importance of thanking the Eibishter, saying thank you, saying Baruch Hashem, blessed be God, etc., etc. Saying different terms of acknowledging God and what He does for us and how that makes an effect above Hashem. So those are the two things that the Baal Shem Tov internalized on that 16th birthday. 1724, the Baal Shem Tov is upgraded. He passes the tests of Eliyahu Hanavi. Eliyahu Hanavi says, I taught you everything. It's time for you to learn from who I learned from. And Achia Hashilaini, the teacher of Eliyahu Hanavi, begins to appear to Baal Shem Tov and begins to teach him. This goes on for 10 years. In the year 1734, Chai Elul, the Baal Shem Tov finally, after a tremendous pressure being placed on him by his other teacher, Adam Baal Shem. Adam Baal Shem was the leader of the Nistarim at that time. And he pressured the Baal Shem Tov tremendously to reveal himself. The Baal Shem Tov didn't want to. Achia Shilaini wanted him to. Baal Shem wanted him to. We have today the letters revealed, they're printed in the end of Keser Shem Tov. The letters that Adam Baal Shem wrote pressuring the Baal Shem Tov to reveal himself. The Baal Shem Tov refused each time until finally he couldn't say no anymore. Chai Elul of the year Tov Kuf Sadik Dalid. The Baal Shem Tov refuses. Meaning he starts collecting a following and teaching his teachings to the masses. 11 years later, the Alter Rebbe Neshama Chadasha in the year Tov Kuf Hey Kahas is born. This birth of the Alter Rebbe is elaborated in Kuti Diburim. Rabbi elaborates of all the details of how the Baal Shem Tov, for 3 years, already envisioned that somebody in this generation is going to merit a new neshama that's going to change the globe. And he had no clue who it was. He says the order, the seder, the shtalshus for a new neshama is completely different than all of us neshamas who come back numerous times. It's very different a Gilgul than a new neshama. And the day the Alter Rebbe was born, the Baal Shem Tov didn't say Tachanan, he made a big Seudah. And he revealed only to a select few, of the meaning of this day that a new neshama is coming to the world. The history continues. In the year 1813, that's Tov Kuf Ayin Gimel. It was actually 1812. Yeah, 1812. Tov Kuf Ayin Gimel. So what happened? You knew the year. You knew the year. Right. Yeah, but there was also 1813 in Tov Kuf Ayin Gimel. Okay. Tov Kuf, after January becomes 1813. So, but it's true, this was 1812 because on Chai Elul of the year, no, I'm sorry, it is tough. It is 1813. It was in Chai Elul of Tov Kuf Ayin Gimel. Okay, it is 1813 that this happened. Well, so what happened? The Mittler Rebbe moved from the town of Kremenchuk to Lubavitch. The city of Lubavitch, as is known to be the founding city of Chabad Chassidus, after the Alter Rebbe began on Chai Elul with him. And I believe I didn't fact check this, but you can fact check me afterwards on this one. I believe that 770 was purchased on paper on Chai Elul, the year Tavshin Aleph. So we see a very interesting pattern of how the continuity of Afatzas Chassidus is connected with Chai Elul. Mitzvah Rebbe moved to Lubavitch in Chai Elul 1813. 770 was a nice, big, spacious home of a malpracticing doctor. The owner of previous owner of 770 was a Jew. It was a very Jewish neighborhood, Crown Heights, not black, very Jewish, very high-class Jewish, modern American, wealthy American, well-to-do, but conservative. A conservative neighborhood. They didn't want Orthodox Jews living there. And he was a conservative Jew who was I believe, a surgeon. If I'm not mistaken, he was actually an abortion surgeon, but I could be mistaken on that. But he was a surgeon who did malpractice in two ways. Number one, he cheated the government in taxes, which is probably why the government considered the worst crime. And his second crime was that he would do surgeries under the book, meaning he didn't go through the proper system, the proper vetting for, basically selling your doctor wares under the margin. So he was arrested. He sat in the federal prison for a few years. And his beautiful mansion home of 770, which he built in, I think, 1934, the 30s, was now under auction by the state. It was a very good price. It was a metzia, as they say, a bargain. And the Chassidim, until that point, from Tes Elul Tavshin, until the Rebbe Rayatz moved in Tavshin Aleph, maybe Tavshin that year, until the Rebbe Rayatz moved in Tavshin, it was like 6 months, the Rebbe was living in hotels, in different hotels. And so they got together, they raised the money, they got together, they put a mortgage down, they purchased it on, I believe it was Chai Elul. I believe Yisrael Jacobson is signed on the mortgage. I believe so. Do they pay rent? They have to pay the mortgage.
But then all the people that there were home.
Correct. It was a very affluent, non-religious, conservative neighborhood. Oli Torah was the conservative shul of that neighborhood. The Oli Torah building used to be the main conservative shul. And when the Rebbe Rayatz, when they were looking to move in there was tremendous opposition in the neighborhood. Tremendous opposition. They didn't want. They were fighting tremendously not to have the Rebbe Rayatz buy the home. They didn't want to see. They ran away from here. They didn't want to see once again black hats, big beards, Yiddish. They were Americanized. They wanted nice American Jews. So they were very scared. Prices would go down of the houses. So they had a huge meeting of opposition. One of the main voices there, he took all the papers that were signed, the lawyer papers, opposing it and everything. I don't know, whatever they had that they were legally trying to oppose it with. So they gave it to one of the main leaders, and he said, he was like making believe, like he should, like colleague, when he got up there, and he started telling the people, you think that's the only thing you did wrong? So he gets up there and he starts telling them, you think this is the only thing this was a Jew who was Meiser Nefesh in Europe, was chased by the anti-Semites, and now when he comes to New York, you're going to chase him too? He tore out all the papers to shreds, and he said, you're not getting involved in this, he's moving wherever he wants. And that's how it works.
Right.
So they bought the place. Okay. But one thing we see that Chayel is a day that's deeply ingrained in the soul of the Chassidic movement as a day of where there's the continuity of the Parsha Chassidus. So tonight we're going to study a mime of the Alter Rebbe, where we're going to see an example, right? Why did we need the Alter Rebbe? Why wasn't the Baal Shem Tov enough? The Baal Shem Tov, he threw us the darts. He threw us ideas. You got to be a happy Jew. You got to not be depressed. You got to serve Hashem b'simcha. You got to look at every Jew in a proper light. He threw us the ideas, but he didn't throw us the how to fulfill the ideas, how to internalize it. How do you do it? That the Alter Rebbe came to expand. The Baal Shem Tov was like the seed in the earth, while the Alter Rebbe is the gardener, to come and water it, and have it grow, and pick the fruits. The seed, you have no gardener. Without the gardener, there's nothing to collect. It's not expressed. So we're going to actually study a mimer in Parshas Kiseitze. This is it's a very short piece. It's the first mimer there. Last week's Parsha Kiseitze. So the pasuk states that when a person goes out to war against his enemy, and Hashem hands him into his hand, and he captures a captive. So we know that the beginning of the Parsha of last week discusses the mitzvah of Yefas Torah, the Eishes Yefas Torah, that if during battle a person, a soldier, saw a woman in the enemy side who he wanted to marry, then there's a whole process he has to go through in order to be allowed to marry. The mime over here that we're going to be learning, this section, is going to deal with a Chassidic interpretation of what is exactly this war, who is the enemy, and who's the captive. But before we get into it, let's just discuss a little bit of the literal meaning of the verse. The literal meaning of the verse is, as we just stated, it's referring to a case where a soldier wants to take a captive of war in marriage. And the Torah gives all these directives. And the Mefarshim all ask the following questions. Questions asked with Orach Chaim HaKadosh. We know it states, in fact, we learned this recently, also in the Parsha of Shoftim, that only the tzaddikim go to war. Anyone who has fear of sin, send them back. The whole reason why the Torah gave this weird criteria, if you're in the first year of engagement, first year of marriage, first year of making a vineyard, first year of having a Chanukah Sabayis, go home. Why did the Torah make this? Let him go to war to cover up on the sinners. When the Kohen Milchama announces, the Mashiach Milchama announces, all sinners, please go home. Who's gonna go home? Who's gonna put themselves to shame? They'd rather die at war than to go home. So the Torah says we'll give you these three categories. So instead of us saying all these people go home, we'll say everyone who needs to go home, and this is a list of foregoing. So say, oh, he must have just gotten married. Mazel tov, he must just build a house. Did you build a vineyard? Yeah, sure, I built a vineyard. Yeah. So he has a way to cover it up, go home without feeling offended. That's what it took, really. So who are the people who went to war? Only the tzaddik. Only people who were convinced that they were tzaddikim. They knew that they were tzaddikim. They were the ones who went to war. So what on earth is a nice tzaddik in the middle of war thinking about some shiktzah? Marrying a shiktzah. There's nothing better to do. Says the Rechaim HaKadosh that just like when you physically go to war, there's a few reasons. One reason is a war of defense. We're trying to protect ourselves. But another reason is it's a war to capture territory, to take over whatever features that land contains that would be very strategic for the nation. And the same thing applies spiritually. Every single nation contains sparks of kedusha, of holiness, of godliness. And one of the purposes of war is to capture those sparks. That's how else are those sparks going to come to the Jewish people? They are their nation, we are our nation. How are they going to get involved? It says the Rechaim HaKadosh that there are also Gentiles who contain godly sparks, otherwise known as a nefesh elikis, godly soul. Now, there's a few ways of how these godly souls can be redeemed. One way is for the person to convert. The person converts, and they then receive the godly soul. That's what a ger is, or a via is. But sometimes they carry a godly soul of a male, and they are a female. So how can they have this godly soul enter a Jewish family? So Hashem takes this tzaddik that's at war, says the Rechaim HaKadosh, enters him into a state where he becomes passionate, where he becomes lustful for this non-Jewish woman. And if he ends up marrying her, he ends up redeeming this soul, as the Rambam writes, that the child born from that union is a ger that is born. No one's born a ger. You're either born a Jew or you're born a guy that converts. There's no such thing. Chaim explains that's why the Rambam uses that term, because it's a special case that there the woman of the enemy side is carrying a nefesh elikis that needs a Jewish body, and this is why Hashem created this whole system in order to redeem these Jewish souls. We're going to bring in on the mind of the Alter Rebbe how he explains this in Avodas Hashem.
Hold on 1 second. You're saying that inside that woman is the Shema of the man?
Inside, on top of her. No, it's not inside of her. It's associated with her. When you carry a discount key with memory, is that inside of you? It's yours. You have the access to it. Right? It's not inside of you. I mean, you know how much information is here and is not in here? So it's not inside of us. It's inside the computer, but it's ours. So too, Gentiles, before they convert, a ger, before he converted, contained a godly soul associated with him, but not installed.
But the male thing,
Also, before any union takes place with the soldier, the neshama is not installed with him. It's just like in Shulmaki. Says the Alter Rebbe, in the Yisra the Zohar states, Sloisa Shas Kirva. We think of battle, taking up the guns, and going to Gaza. But there's another battle that's a little more difficult that happens every day. And that's the battle of prayer. Shas Tzlusa, the time of prayer, Shas Krava, is a time of war. And there's many levels of this war. The first level is get out of bed. right? To wake up, to daven. They say that there was once an individual who woke up at 5:30 in the morning with his alarm clock. His Yetzer Tov told him to get up. It's time to go to shul, to daven nates. And of course, his Yetzer Hara told him, listen, it's late, it's early, it's still dark outside, it's cold, it's the winter. You also didn't sleep enough. He gave him 110 terutzim of why he should stay in bed. So as he's telling this over to his friend, the friend asked him, so who won in the end? The Yetzer Tov, the Yetzer. I said, what do you think? Of course the Yetzer Tov won. It was a long and tough battle. But after 6 hours, finally the Yetzer Tov got over. So that's the first battle of davening. It's Parsha to get up, to make the time. The second battle is finally you made the time, you won the first battle, you now made it into the ring. To pay attention to what you're saying. Not get lost in planning the rest of your life in your davening. That's the second battle. Pirush HaMidos, so just pay attention to what you're doing. Even if you've won that battle, there's another battle. The second battle, didn't read it yet. The second battle is simply to focus on the prayer. The third battle is a little deeper and more difficult. As much as focusing on prayer is difficult, the third battle is even more difficult. The third battle is to exert oneself, to exert the mind in contemplation to the point that you squeeze the oil of emotions out of your heart. Even if a person has come to a state that he knows the tricks of his Yetzer Hara, he knows to focus on Pirush HaMidos. He looks at the English, he did whatever he knows he has to do, and he knows how to pay attention during that. But it's like traveling on a bus with someone driving you. Or it's like traveling in a plane with autopilot. You just relax. You're reading, you think about the words a little bit, the meaning of the words, and you have a nice, relaxing, davening, simple, no exertion. So that also is no good. That's also failing the battle. As davening, Chassidishe, Chassidishe, there's a huge battle here going on. The first battle is Yetzer doesn't want you to show up. You're already showing up, doesn't want you to pay attention. You're already paying attention, he says, Atkan. At least, do not exert your mind and your heart, certainly not your heart, to begin getting all emotional about everything here. Just read the words, that's it. Let's make peace. I won't bother you, you won't bother me. I'll let you have Pirush HaMidos. So this is the huge battle of davening, the battle of exerting the mind in contemplation of God to the point you can arouse fear. Says the Alter Rebbe, how do we know? Well, on what basis does the Zohar state that battle, that war, is davening? As it states in Scripture, Shelokachti miyad ha'ameri b'charbi v'kashti, state in Parshas Vayechi, that Yaakov Avinu stated to his children on his deathbed, that I have taken the land of Shechem from the Amorites with my sword and with my arrow. Turgim Onkelos, and Onkelos says that Tzvusi u'bevarusi, Yaakov Avinu didn't go with no sword or no bow and arrow. It was his prayers. So we see clearly how Onkelos connects war, sword and arrows, with prayer and supplication. So that's the source of desire to say, that prayer is a time of battle. To understand this, as the Alter Rebbe, what is exactly this war that's going on in prayer? And if you want to define prayer as a war, then let it be a war all the way. Once you conquer the enemy, we're done. Do people battle the same country every day after victory? So once we've won the war, we shouldn't have to daven anymore. Daven every day. Why do we have to re-daven every single day? In the Amar Razak, tefillah is connected to midin tikun. Chazal state that the tefillos, that the prayers, were instituted corresponding to the karbanos, the carbon tamid that was brought daily, twice a day, morning and afternoon, in the temple. What's the connection between animals that were sacrificed on an altar to praying to God? They seemingly have no connection at all. So what's the connection? The Inyan. Kedichsiv is karbani lachmi ishai shiyu makrivin akal mizman beis hamikdash. La'oila gad mizbech min habehema kadesh terid eish min hashamayim v'toichel asay. To understand the connection between karbanis and prayer, and how prayer corresponds now in times of exile to the karbanis, we have to first introduce what exactly did the sacrificial offerings affect up in heaven. So it states in scripture that karbani lachmi isha, that the karbanis are the bread for my ishai, which means literally my fire, but my angels, my supernal world. How? As when they would bring the carbon in the times of the Beis Hamikdash as an ola offering, an all-consumed offering, on top of the altar from the animal species. This would draw a fire from heaven. Ishai is God's fire from heaven that would come from above. Would consume the sacrifice. In fact, it's brought down that the fire crouched onto the altar in the form of a lion. Little ferocious lion. And when they would travel, they would put a little tin covering over it, over this fire lion, so, nothing gets burnt. But there was a fire from heaven that came. There was a pillar of fire from heaven that would consume the fire. What does this represent? Why does God need a fire from heaven? Kichayis nefesh habahamis yisoidom yisoida eish. You see the life, the energy, the vitality of the animal soul, of the animal, not of us, of the animal, of the cow that was offered, or the sheep. It comes from yisoida eish, from the foundation of fire. So the foundation of fire came down as a pillar of fire from heaven to collect what was created from it in the soul of the animal. So the fire of God consumes the soul of the animal that's rooted in fire. As the four levels, gradations of creation, inanimate, vegetative, living, and human, corresponds to the four different levels of fire, earth, water, and fire, air, water, and earth. Now, what corresponds to what? Fire corresponds to the soul of the living animal, while wind, air, corresponds to the human. It says in the Parsha, so he brings a pasuk to prove the connection that Ruach is humanity, while Eish is Nefesh Chaim. Okay, of an animal. Now when this pillar of fire came down from heaven, the fire from below became incorporated within the fire from above, meaning that the nefesh of the chaya, the animal soul of this animal, became incorporated in its root in the fire of above. Now also the fire from above is a level called animal. We know that the chariot of God incorporates four different species, one of them being the ox and the second being the lion. And the fire of God, and they are also Yeseda Eish. The ox and lion are both Yeseda Eish, and they are what came down to collect the Eish of the Ruach, of the spirit of the animal. And this is the meaning of what we said earlier. The figure of a lion fire, of a fire in the shape of a lion that would come and eat the karbanos. as this represented the Yesod of Aish, which is the Merkaba of Aryeh and Shar, coming down and collecting its goods. So this is what went on in the temple when we brought a korban. Mishachara Beis Hamikdash, when the temple was destroyed, the Yesod of Aish, the Merkava of Shor, and Aryeh no longer have food. No more animals being brought to them. No more new souls being brought to them. So Chachamim had to do something quick, because you know what happens when lions get hungry. You know what happens when oxen get hungry. Not a good sight if you're around, because they won't be hungry for long. So Chachamim had to come up with a way. How do we feed Pnei Aryeh and Pnei Shar the kedusha that they were accustomed to receive in temple times? So Tiknu Anshe Knesset Agdela. Anshe Knesset Agdela instituted Hatfila, the prayer, Sheyakiv Kol Echad Nafshe Yabehamis, that every person offer his own personal, living, internal animal soul. Laha'aleiso lakashla b'sharsha, to elevate and connect it with its root. She gamken miyasayda eish, which also similar to the soul of the lamb and the soul of the cow, it also comes from eish. Although humanity comes from ruach, as we said earlier, that's the nefesh alikis, that's the nefesh asichlis. The animal soul, however, comes from yisayda fire, and is in essence a relative of the animal soul of the animals. So through davening, we elevate and connect to its root, our own animal soul. The animal soul of a Jew, it's rooted in a very high level of the Pnei Pnei Shor, and through davening we elevate it to it, similar to karbanos. אלא שלאחר ירידס והשתלשלוס וסלז ועשר בעין סודים שומרי יפנים נמשך תענוגי העולם הזה וכך המסע ושודם כנסחנים האש. So now that we've explained that the animal soul in truth and indeed comes from the high level of Pnei Aryeh and Pnei Shor, how is it that he's such an animal? I don't see anything holy about him. Animals do the most horrible, cruel, self-centered, egotistical things. Let's take animals kapshute. They think of nothing but themselves. The lion, if he's hungry, couldn't care about any other creation. He needs to eat, and anyone can become his dinner. The ox is not that much better. The human is the worst. We're able to destroy, pounce, to do the most horrible animalistic things. So how does it happen? The human. Humanity has caused more damage to humanity than has the entire animal kingdom combined for all generations. That's factual statistics. There are more human-related deaths per year in the world than there are of all other causes combined. I'm not talking about old age. I'm talking about causes of early death. Human intervention, murder, war is the top cause. Crime. So how did that happen? How do we have this animal soul, which is completely an animal, a wild animal, a beast? How does he come from such a high and holy level? So Untitled explains that what we see in ourselves and in other humans, that horrible animal soul, that's after it went down, the Yeridas HaShtalshlus, and became invested in the 70 princes, Shomerei HaIfanim. When it entered into the Shomerei HaIfanim, which is the lowest level of angels between this physical world and the spiritual world, Nimshach Tanugei Ha'olam Hazeh V'Keich HaMesach. While upstairs in heaven, prior to its descent, the nefesh habahamis of even an animal, and certainly of a Jew, all of its taiva surrounded godliness. Couldn't care less about ice cream and about anything else that has physical connotation. Its tainug was for godliness. However, as it went through the Shinrei Fanim, it sort of lost its memory of spiritual, godly tainug and became absorbed with a new form of tainug. In other words, the idea of the animal soul is lust and pleasure. That's its mahus, that's its essence, lust and pleasure. What type? What do you lust for? What do you find pleasure in? Changes with the descent. And when the Nefesh HaBahamis descended through all the levels till finally made to this world, it lost all knowledge of the pleasure involved in godliness, and it only sees the pleasure involved in the physical lusts. In other words, it's not that the Nefesh HaBahamis can't love God today. He can't have lust for godliness. He can't have passion for God. He could, but it's not in front of him. It's a lost memory. It has to be revived. It has to be reminded. It has to be worked on and developed and brought out. But right now, Basher Husham, what he sees is lust for the physical things. So the fire of passion for God turned into a fire for passion for physical lusts. The Gama Yetzahara Eish Zar Doilik. The Yetzahara is a foreign fire that's burning inside of the animal soul. It's burning inside of the Jew. It's tzarich shehu gamke, v'tzarich lahalis, nefesh habahamis l'sharsha. A Jew's tafkid purpose in prayer is to take this animal soul with its foreign, depleted spiritual fire that now has a foreign fire and elevate it to its root, be'esh shelamayil. With a skalu be'bechinas makavel al-yenis will be incorporated above Bechinas Eish Oichla Eish, so that the fire of Kedusha will come and eat the fire of foreign lusts. So that a person react and act with the foreign fires in a cold fashion, uninterested. And he saves all of his passion only for Kedusha. Meaning that he should turn it over from having passion for physical things to passion for godliness. To attach to God. So just like by Karbanis, we would take the soul of the animal and send it back up to its root. So too with us, we take our animal soul and send it back up. And how do we accomplish that? Well, the animal, they slaughtered him, he died. Soul went up. Baruch Hashem, we survived that, and we live every day after that. So how are we doing a karban? Because our soul contains a foreign lust that is not natural to it. Meaning it's not original, it's an alien. It's an invader that has come into our country. And our job is to clean it up and down. Clean it up by arousing and reminding its original and true passion about it. And that eats up and consumes the foreign fires. Now the question is asked, why the need to do this daily? If I did it already once, I've conquered the country, I've reinstituted the norms of the animal soul for godly passion. Done. Do it once in your life and you're good. Maybe it could take years until you reach it. Once you did it, it should be open. Why do you have to daven every day? So the answer is the Alter Rebbe. Every day, the animal soul is reborn with its foreign taiva. So even if you managed one day to daven well and bring a carbon of the animal soul, you got a new one tomorrow. There's a new taiva tomorrow. Every day you need to revive and bring down the fire from above to consume the foreign fire of that day. It says in scripture in Tehillim that God created days. What does this mean, created days? There is a set amount of days within a man's lifetime. Some men live for 70 years, some live for 80 years. It says the Alter Rebbe that God planted a certain amount of days, very calculated for every human being, in accordance to the amount of animal soul karbanis he has to bring to God. We'll see. He's going to elaborate. The amount of days we live in this world was not given for on behalf of the godly soul. The nefesh alikis, the godly soul, doesn't need to be fixed. He has no issues. He didn't come here to make up something. He didn't come here because he has lacking of something. The godly soul is on shlichus. He came here to help the animal soul. The godly soul is eternal. And it's not incorporated in time. So the godly soul, it's not shaykh to say that God gave a human X and Y amount of days in order for the godly soul to fulfill its mission. No. It's not for the godly soul, it's for the animal soul. The godly soul is already matukim, it's already fixed, it has all good awaiting for it in the future. So the mission here is not on his behalf, but is on behalf of someone else that he was sent here to help fulfill that mission for. He, the godly soul, does not come from this chariot of the animals, the lion and the ox. As does the animal soul in the human. As does the animal soul in the human. The godly soul comes from the specimen that sits on the chariot, which is Adam Elyon, God. Bottom line here is the Alter Rebbe is clarifying is that you can't say that God created man in this world and gave him life for the purpose of doing a mission with the godly soul. Meaning that the purpose is for the sake of the godly soul to fulfill something. No. The purpose is for the sake of the animal soul. And the godly soul is sent as a shliach to help facilitate that mission. So now the Alter Rebbe says the contrast. Rather, the amount of days that man lives, nitan lislavish boy, nefshay bahamis, v'shanak tzuvim, the mispa shishur chafmas yizbach, sheyuchalas is benafshay lahalis menach kolkach teifes netzutzim shanap l'shama, v'shviras hakedim, v'chol yei misanis kecha. Says Alter Rebbe this. God sets man's days based on the amount of days that the godly soul needs to be invested in this body and worked on with the animals. A person's days is measured by, in God's infinite wisdom, of how many sparks of Kedusha must be elevated, are relevant, are connected with this person's animal soul, and thereby must be elevated. And God gives a person an exact amount of days that he can elevate this and work on it. As every day, a new spark, and a new koyach is revealed in the neshama, that a person is then given the challenge and the mission to elevate back up to God. No, why? Go ahead.
What about people that don't
Right. I'll ask even a better question. What about people who are frum and daven every day but don't do this aveda? They are not igniting the passion of the godly soul. They are either on level one where they manage to daven, but their minds are planning out their whole life ahead of them. Or level two, they only daven, they're relaxed daven. First class.
How many times do you allowed to repeat something?
You're not supposed to repeat anything in daven. That's another question. You're not supposed to repeat in daven.
You found yourself here at a certain page. I get it.
It's like falling asleep on the wheel. It's like falling asleep on the wheel. Before you know it, you're already. Yeah. But you're asking it's a good question. It's a very difficult question to deal with. So let's try to analyze this. If a person does not fulfill this avodah, so he is in essence he's never bringing a carbon. And he's given an exact amount of days. So first of all, there's many ways that Metzutzos can go up. So we're eating and serving Hashem. There's many ways a person can serve Hashem. So I don't think the Alter Rebbe here is limiting that the Metzutzos, or the Nefesh HaBahamis that belongs to every Jew, his peklach that he has to redeem, is specifically and only elevated through this service of prayer. I don't think he means that. What is true is that there are certain qualities or quantities of Metzutzos that do need this form of avodah for them to get to elevation. And that's why it's so imperative. That's why Chassidishe Chabad emphasizes so much avodah satfilah. This is what this Maimon is saying. This Maimon is coming and saying, guys, the idea that the Baal Shem Tov taught us of avodah satfilah is not just because it helps you think about God, it helps you fulfill mitzvah Amos Hashem. This is a real deep life mission involved in it, of the karbanis. You're bringing the karban of your nefesh, and you're elevating these netzotzos to God. Don't forget that even after Mashiach comes and we have the Beis Hamikdash, we're still going to have a period of hayom la'aseisim, of work. So this also could be part of the work. But it could also be that Hashem said, listen, every single person, his netzotzos are eventually going to be redeemed. The question is how. It's like a camp or a school that makes a treasure hunt. They do it a lot here in Tzfas for some reason. I always see it when I walk in the old city. They do a treasure hunt. They hide things in different classes after flying. You ever hide in the base Chabad?
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. I'm very into it here in Tzfas. And so, if nobody found it, they're going to leave it there. You're going to take it out. You didn't find it, you tried. You didn't find it. Maybe you didn't try hard enough. Eventually, every Jew's nefesh habahamis is going to be refined. The question is it going to be through us or through him? Who's going to be the one to do the work? And obviously, it's much better that we do the work. As when we do the work, it's a different experience. People think, there's no real difference, a chassid, a non-chassid. We're all keeping the Shulchanaruchharav, we're all keeping the mitzvahs. In the end of the day, we're all going to get the same prize, the same peklach in Olam Haba. We're all really doing the same thing. It's just different emphasis. This one emphasizes this. It's a big sheker. It's not true. Obviously, every Jew, Hashem is not going to not give schar for any Jew who does a mitzvah. Every Jew is going to get paid for his mitzvah. The question is, what's going to be the experience of his schar? And the experience of Teres HaChassidus, the experience of a person who learns Chassidus and does Avodah Satfilah, it's a completely different universe of schar than those who don't. This was once said in a Fabregan of Yutes Kislev of the year Tav Shin Tes Vav. What happened in Tav Shin Tes Zayin? What happened in Tav Shin Tes Vav? Tes Zayin? Yeshaya Karelitz Chassidishe passed away. He was a famous Talmud Chacham, a great Atzim in Tyrus Hanigla. He was the Gadol Adar, one of the Gedolei Adar of that time, and the Gadol Adar of Litvish Jewry at that time, of Eretz Yisrael. And the Rafal Nachman Khan, the Biel Khan's father, was giving a Fabregan that year on Yutes Kislev in the yeshiva called Panovich. Back then, Panovich Yeshiva was not known at all for having any animosity towards any group of Jews. It was run by the Panovich Rav of Kahanim. This was way before all of the politics and issues entered into the yeshiva. And there were many Lubavitchers who went there. It was one of the prize yeshivas that were around. Many people from all different walks of Jewry. And they used to make a Fabregan once in Yom the Pagra. So on Yutis Kislev, he mentioned he took mashke, drank like a Russian, vodka. And he said that you should know that while the Chazanish was a big tzaddik, and we don't chas v'shalom put it down, and that's first of all to know that chas v'shalom to put down the Gdei Yisrael of the non-Chassidim. The Rebbe referred to him as a Yerushalayim. He was for sure a Talmud Chacham Atzim, a tremendous Talmud Chacham. It's a letter that the Rebbe Rayatz wrote to the father of the Zalman Nechemya Goldberg, the son-in-law of Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. Zalman Nechemya Goldberg, when he was a young yingul, a young boy, his father wrote to the Rebbe Rayatz regarding him and also regarding a shidduch that he was looking for. I think it was a shidduch for his son, for him. It was a young buffer. So the Rebbe Rayatz told him, turn to the Chazanish and follow his advice. It's very interesting. The Rebbe would tell someone, turn to this, look for Shagarim, for the bracha of the shidduch. It's a letter. Printed. In any event, so Paul Nachman Khan said, of course, the Chazanish was the Chazanish. But you should know that right now in heaven, in Gan Eden, there's a major jealousy going on. Chazanish spent his whole life learning Nigla. He was an opponent of learning Chassidus. He was a Masnagid. And it happened to be that the same day the Chazanish passed away, there was a young Lubavitcher boy who Nebuch was nifted from a machla at age 12. A boy. Same day. And this boy had managed to learn Yud-Beis Prakim of Tanya Balpaz, this traditional in Chabad. So the Chazanish, so Nachman Khan said in Fabregan to the Bachman, to the people who were there in Panovich, that when the Chazanish went up to Gan Eden and he saw the world of schar that this boy is receiving for his Yud-Beis Prakim of Tanya, he tried to get in. He was filled with passion and desire and lust to receive a taste of the schar of this boy. And he got burnt. He wasn't able to make it in because he never studied this section of Torah.
Yeah,
He was drunk.
just making it up.
And he was trying to emphasize how the importance of learning Chassidus, and how we're saying is that it's a different type of experience. An experience of Judaism with Chassidus is a different experience of Judaism without Chassidus, not just in this world, but in the next world too. The difference is in the next world, they're going to know the truth, and they're going to want in on it, but it's too late. 1 second, the story's not over. That was the last Fabregan he gave in Panovich Yeshiva. After that, he had to move the Fabregan outside. And also in merit of that Fabregan, the Rebbe says in a Sikha a few days later, or maybe it was a week later, it was Yud Shvat. The Rebbe said in a Sikha Yud Shvat. That year, that the Post Authority became wealthy over all the letters I received from Eretz Yisrael of complaint against this chassid. That's the wording the Rebbe used in this. I received many, many, many letters of complaint. The Rebbe said this. I gave all the details of the story. The Rebbe mentioned the story in short. That there was a person, he didn't say who it was. It was Bill Khan's father. There was an individual in a yeshiva who said this about Chazanish. The Rebbe went through the whole story, the details, the basic details. And people wrote to me many complaint letters. How can your chassid, you have to tell him to be quiet, you have to tell him to apologize, you have to tell him to back down. How can he say such a thing to Chazanish? He's jealous of a little boy, a 12-year-old. How can he say such a thing? A chutzpah, busy atayra. So the Rebbe says, to understand the meaning of what this Fabregener meant, it's an explicit Gemara. Gemara says that in the future, Lasad Lave, Kol Tzadik Nichve Mechupasa Shel Chavere. Every tzaddik will be burnt from the chuppah of his friend. What does that mean? What does that mean? So it's explained in Kabbalah and Chassidishe the following: that schar mitzvah mitzvah. Every Jew's schar is created from his experience and his involvement of Judaism that he did in this world. And being that everyone's quantity and quality of involvement in Judaism is different, so everyone has a different ray of godliness that he receives his schar from. And so too, every section and part of Torah is unique in and of its own. You can't compare the revelation of godliness affected by learning scripture, Torah Shebechsav, to that affected by Torah Shebal Peh. And you can't compare that affected by learning the Agadata Ben Yaakov to that affected by learning Sugyas in Shas of Abai and Rabbi. And you can't affect the Likus that's revealed through learning the section of Halacha versus the section of Pilpul. Every section of Torah has its own defined and distinct revelation and experience. And so too Panemius HaTorah, and so too Kabbalah. They have their own world of revelation and experience. And therefore what he said is 100% accurate, that in Shamayim, someone who didn't learn Chassidus, Nichve Mechupasa Shel Chaverei, it doesn't matter how big of a goyin and tzaddik in Yerushalayim and Lamdan he was in the other sections of Torah. In this section of Torah, it's not only that he's not going to receive the reward for it because he didn't learn it, but he will be jealous and try to get something from the schar of the other people, but he won't manage. He'll be burnt. What is going to be burnt? It's way above his level. As you are what you learn, just like you are what you eat, you are what you learn. So what you've learned, that you're able schar mitzvah to receive in the future. But if you didn't learn it, you can't receive it in the future.
So that was the beginning of the Massive.
No, not at all. That started many years later. That's a different story. Okay. In the Massive, no, that everything was still fine after that. Just he didn't forget in the yeshiva. That's.
So now we had negative feedback on what the Rebbe said?
I don't know, but that's the Rebbe didn't scold the chassid. The Rebbe defended him and explained him. Right. Right. So, right, what happened before Chassidus came in? That's a great question. So, the Torah is always rich in one area and poor in another area, and just like it is today, different books explain different concepts. It is in time. In the time-wise of the Jewish people, different in different times, they have different parts of Torah that we merited to learn. 100%, the experience of the Tanaim of this schar is not going to be similar to the experience of Amarim. The experience of Amarim is not going to be similar to the experience of the Ga'inim. Everyone's going to have a different experience based on what was available for them to be involved in Yiddishkeit at their time. Let's not forget, Moshe Rabbeinu says, it's one of the matters, that he looked upon the door of Ikvus the Mashiach, and he was humbled and jealous. So if Moshe Rabbeinu, who was the father of all the Nevi'im, the father of all of Torah, is jealous of, we know what's up in this generation. We know that from our perspective, there's nothing to be jealous about. But Moshe Rabbeinu saw the truth of the different aspects of Messiahness that we have, and we pass, and therefore, so everybody will get what's coming to them. But you can't blame someone before the Baal Shem Tov, why didn't you learn Chassidus? But someone, you see, it's a lot harder when you didn't have access to it. It wasn't around, so what do you want? Versus someone who had access to it, but didn't do his homework, didn't study it.
Could you tell me where that comes from? I've used that before. Someone said that's.
What?
Where is that? The Moshe Rabbeinu looked into our generation and saw that.
It's a medrash. You want the exact medrash? I can look it up in that. It's written in my book, Awaken Like a Jew, in the first chapter.
He said that he would be able to enroll what we have to go through.
That it doesn't say, but it says that he was humbled by. I mean, that's the gist of the idea. It's not so inaccurate. It doesn't say in that much, but that's the gist of the idea. He was humbled saying, wow, and I thought I had problems. I thought that I was so holy. Look at these guys. So it's really the gist of the idea. Let's do one more short one, and we'll call it a night.
The other one?
Yeah. It's just one paragraph. I didn't tell you the other Maimon Chazal, that once you get into the chuppah, it's very hard to get out.
It's hard, but it's not impossible.
Yeah, go ahead.
The whole idea for binos is just really weird, right?
Okay.
So,
for those who don't understand it, yes.
So I'm saying, if you don't know these things, which,
Most of
still a little hard to grasp, but it helps. So what do people make of it? Otherwise, they just say, okay, this is what we did, and that's...
What do people...
people who don't want
People view it as something very primitive that makes no sense. What are you doing killing an animal because of your own issues? You do a sin and you kill an animal? How does that make any sense? So obviously it's looked at as very primitive, and without Chassidishe, it's not really understood. There's many parts of Torah that's not understood without Chassidishe, without Kabbalah. You can go through the whole Seder Kachim, you spend years learning about Kabbalahs, but you ask a simple question: why is it done? Why does God need rib steak when he ain't going to be eating nothing? I don't know. It says in the pasuk, Reach Nichochi. Why? What's the reach? Is God's physical and he needs to smell physical meat burning? There is no explanation. This week's Parsha Kisaveh speaks about Klolus. Well, last week's Parsha also mentioned, when it was discussing how when a Moabite man converts, even after 10 generations, it's forbidden to bring them in. They're not allowed to marry into the Jewish people. Why? Because they were very cruel and evil and did not give us food and water. And also they sent Bilam to curse the Jewish people, and says the pasuk, and God didn't listen to Bilam, and he turned his curses into blessing. What's the big chiddush? What's the grace of chiddush here that God is saying? It was saying in the Torah, and God didn't listen to Bilam. Why should he listen to Bilam? Who on earth is Bilam? Who is this guy? Why should he listen to this Ish Manovel, Ish Bliah, like Bilam HaRasha? Why would he listen to him? That we have to say as if it's such a grace azach, it's such an amazing thing that God didn't listen even to Bilam. Bilam is a shegitz. He's a Rasha, an Ish Bliah. Also, it says that he didn't listen to him at all. And how can it say that he turned his curse into blessing? He didn't listen to him. This is an amazing Torah of the Alter Rebbe we're going to learn right now. And it falls right into play of how the Alter Rebbe took a teaching of the Baal Shem Tov and expanded it in Chacham Bina V'Das. The Baal Shem Tov taught us how you have to always think positive and see positive about another Jew and in another Jew. Don't open your mouth up to the negative. Don't think in the negative. Don't open up your mouth to the negative. When the Magidim would come, when they would scare the population, the populace, the Baal Shem Tov would get up and defend. Why are you giving Musar to these poor people who are trying to be good Jews? Give Musar to Hashem. Tell him. As all the famous stories go. So this is Alter Rebbe takes this teaching and he explains it. There are constantly prosecuting and persecuting angels who are trying to find issue with the Jewish people. And it's for this purpose that we blow the shofar, to knock them all out. Now, what does the Keteiger do? It does a search to find issues with the Jewish people, to find their sins. And he searches for ways to how to find failure and sinful activity within them. Bilam was not just a physical person, he was a movement. Bilam was a movement of finding problems, finding issues with the Jewish people. Is this what Bilam exactly did? He tried to find different sins of the Jewish people. He went to areas by the mountains to overlook areas that Bnei Yisrael would sin in the future, to try to have the curse befall due to those sins. So Bilam's movement represents looking out and making issue, being nitty-gritty with all the issues, with all the things of the Jewish people, in order to cause God to distance himself from them. But when we talk about this, we can also do this as people. Bilam is a movement not just in heaven, but also on earth. When we have when someone's gotten on our blacklist, on our negative side, human nature tends to be very, we tend to magnify and search for every single possible thing the person may be doing wrong towards us. And we can twist and turn even something of good to bad and something of bad to good. So Bilam is a movement that's everywhere. So this is the phrase of the verse. Even though Bilam came with claims of sin, meaning there was real stuff going on, nonetheless, God didn't pay attention to him. He chose to ignore the issues that were found. Someone recently stated, I forgot who, that the entire Nixon trial, the era of Nixon when he was almost impeached, was a complete witch hunt. He's a political historian, scholar in Prime University. So they asked him, what do you mean it was a witch hunt? Nixon did some illegal things. He did. So he said, are you kidding me? Every single president has a package. The fact that you choose to focus and make issues, that's a witch hunt. He said, there's not one president that didn't have similar issues. Everybody's doing something. When you're choosing to pinpoint and to make issue, we're calling it a witch hunt. So that's what's going on here. The Bilam movement is a witch hunt, searching for issues. And the Eibishter, and even though they found the issues, the Eibishter decided to ignore it. He didn't pay attention at all. And it's not that the Eibishter really has an answer for Bilam. It's not true. They're not going to serve Avodah. No, they will serve Avodah. They did do these sins. It's above Tav V'das HaMusad V'Amuvan. It's completely above intellect. The fact that the Eibishter said, I don't care, be quiet, I'm not listening to you. Without any understanding. Kokach Lama Bir Akasav Lava Hashem Lekech Yavai Lekech Mamish Chon Evan Yisrael Yish Bechinas Vara Mishem Avai Mamish Mashvas Chelek Avai Ame Yaakov Haman Machlas Shem Chelek Vara Mishem Avai Mamish. And the reason is because in the soul of every single Jew you have a part and a piece of God above, and it shines within his soul, and therefore, because of this, God is able to ignore even the factual sins that are brought up. Every Jew has a natural love for God that is embedded within his godly soul. To not be separated from the unity with God. And furthermore, a Jew can only sin if the Ruach Shtus enters into him. That tells him to say, even when you sin, you can still remain Jewish. But to be separated from God on a conscious level, even the lowest of the low of a Jew will give up his life. Due to this nature that's found in his soul. Like a lit candle in which the flame goes up in itself. Without any understanding and intellect. Or it's covered over by a filthy bag. Which is the physical body, which is what creates the spirit of insanity. When a person arouses the love for God, to the point that he wants to leave the constraints and constrictions of the body, he's run to okay. Bottom line is that the Rabbi here in the end just goes into explaining how that because we have this inner connection in our hearts with the Eibishter, which is above nature, above intellect, love for Him, so too He has that for us back. And therefore, that's what it's saying, that he didn't listen. And on the contrary, when he mentioned all these bad things, God had to look and search for us for that above intellect love he has for us, which ended up turning his klal into bracha. But this Maimer Chazal, this Maimer we just learned is also very reminiscent of why it's so important for a Jew to never express from his mouth even factual things about the Jewish people that are not good. And we see this throughout history, how Gedolei Yisrael and Avili Yisrael who open up their mouth to badmouth segments of the Jewish people, even when true, were punished severely by God for doing so. I wasn't involved. I didn't hear anything. I didn't hear anything. But the point is that, for example, we know that in Tav Shinun, so during the election period, someone got up and said that the non-religious, they're a bunch of rabbit eaters, etc., etc. And the Rebbe came out with his full force of Baal Shem Tov spirit. And Shabbos after Shabbos after Shabbos shut this man up. Shabbos after Shabbos, the Rebbe explained how this man, it's also for a Jew to be mekater. It's also for a Jew to open up his mouth. And therefore, what happened has happened in the elections. But chas v'shalom, not to define any group of Jews, to define them as anti-religious, to define them as. There's a lot of issues, and I'm not saying there aren't. That's what we're saying here. Bilam found true things. He found true things, but Hashem chose to ignore it. And when a Jew also chooses to ignore it, that's Ma'ira the Avra and Nachman Rabbi commission. When a Jew chooses to speak it out and be mekater, so first of all, it damages those Jewish people, and second of all, it damages him. Because every kitrug that a person causes on someone else, he causes two on himself. To himself. It's the same way. It's the same policy. The same way you're looking into the bad. Okay, let's open up your page as well. Let's check you out, Mr. Tzadikal. Right. So this is the Baal Shem Tov. The teachers taught us that we always have to go in the positive light, spread Torah and mitzvahs. Don't focus on the negative. We know the negative is true. We know it's around. We know that it's not imaginative, but nonetheless, it's not a shita for focus.
So Hashem chooses to chastise us when we are stupid, not because someone bad.
Hashem chooses, obviously, but we're just saying that we should not have the Jewish people is like brothers. Brothers are meant to protect their brothers in front of the father, not the tattletale and.
Even on ourselves.
Correct. At the same time, we do truth, do cheshbon nefesh, but yeah. Okay, I'm going to end here.